Likert-style questionnaires and surveys are an important tool in data analysis-driven research. However, survey fatigue is commonly reported among participants due to exposure to large number of surveys from different sources. Incomplete and missing responses pose a challenge to completeness and validity of collected data. The key contribution of our work is to explore an alternative approach that collects the same information that a survey aims to gather without showing the respondent the survey itself. The objective is to create an activity which is enjoyable for the participants, which simultaneously generates data that a researcher would normally gather using the survey. Our approach is unique because we design a serious game as a proxy that replaces the survey. This is different than other approaches which attempt to make the survey process or the interface more pleasurable. We identified a number of challenges that need to be addressed and choices to be made in the process of creating a viable serious game proxy. The first challenge is the serious game design itself. How do we create a coherent flow of actions within the game that the user finds enjoyable while creating the flexibility necessary to address the intrinsic objective? The second challenge is to identify if each individual question of the survey needs its own proxy action, or if a single proxy action can generate data for more than one survey question. The last challenge is to demonstrate equivalence between the serious game proxy and the original survey. We need a means to systematically demonstrate how the proxy generates results that are equivalent to the results from administering the survey. We explore these challenges by designing a serious game proxy for a well-established Likert-style survey called the Food Choices Questionnaire. We designed Food Choices Q as a serious game consisting of a number of mini-games. The mini-games are tied together with an overarching narrative. The story arc provides a coherent flow, while the individual mini-games provide the flexibility of customization that is necessary for these mini-games to act as survey question proxies. We chose to explore both options of how questions could be mapped to mini-games. We mapped a single question to a proxy minigame. We also mapped a single minigame to multiple questions belonging to the same category. We observed interesting results for both approaches. A key challenge is to define how the minigame results in play that is relevant to the proxied question. We also need to define how the gameplay is converted to numeric values that can be compared to the survey response scores. The relevance can be achieved by gameplay which closely mirrors actions that the questionnaire probes. For example, our serious game involves gameplay associated with food to create relevance to the FCQ questions. For score mapping, different approaches are possible. The player choices within a minigame can be mapped to scores that correspond to the survey responses. Alternatively, the player can score points or coins within the minigame and they can correspond to the survey responses. Once the minigames and the scoring mechanics have been designed, we move on to the next step. We need to demonstrate that the mean value of the survey responses is similar to the mean value of the proxy generated responses. If the NHST returns significant results, the proxy is not equivalent to the survey due to some confound. But failing to reject the NHST is not enough. To demonstrate equivalence, we rely on a test of equivalence called the TOST, or the two one-sided t-test. Based on acceptable upper and lower limits, we can demonstrate that the mean of the survey responses is equal to the mean of the game proxy output. The proxy design is not easy to get right. Things can go really wrong. The evaluation step is essential to understand if the game proxy design succeeded or not. A within-subject study involving the survey and the game proxy should be conducted to identify the presence of confounds or other issues that affect the proxy's reliability. The two following examples highlight the need for evaluation. They also show that without a baseline survey to compare against, it is harder to validate a serious game as a survey instrument. For the convenience minigame, a standard form of play introduced a confound. The participants resorted to competitive play or agon to reach a higher score, and the minigame did not mirror the results of the proxied category. Balanced design is needed to keep the player in the flow channel of adequate effort versus reward to prevent play from skewing the game results. While testing for individual questions associated with the health category, equivalence could not be demonstrated. In these cases, the participants had differing interpretation of qualitative terms like high in protein to actual numerical values of protein contained in specific dishes. This could have been avoided by creating a comparison that used scales that would not result in ambiguity. There were positive outcomes too. The sensory appeal minigame generated scores that were equivalent to the survey responses. During post hoc interviews, the players mentioned that they were engrossed in the game and found it enjoyable. The serious game proxy can take longer to play as compared to the time taken to respond to the survey. In our example, the game takes 4 times as long as the survey. However, the perceived experience of the time spent on the two activities is different. Games are a special category of applications where performance in terms of task efficiency is not the core criteria, rather, the experience is. Thus, the increased amount of time is considered acceptable. In closing, we demonstrated the challenges and opportunities of using a serious game proxy to replace standard surveys. For further insight, please refer to our paper.